Billionaire was in the elevator with his fiancée when the doors opened and his ex walked in with their child. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from, and once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Oh, and make sure to follow our channel for more stories like this. Now, sit back and enjoy every detail. The glass towers of downtown Seattle gleamed under the late afternoon sun as Evelyn Harper adjusted her navy blazer and checked her watch. The tech conference was already buzzing with energy on the 42nd floor, and she was exactly on time. At 28, she had learned that punctuality was just another way to command respect in a world that still questioned women in technology. "Come on, baby boy," she whispered to the toddler in her arms, smoothing down his unruly brown hair that seemed to stick up no matter what she did. Theo, at 1 year and 8 months old, was the perfect blend of curiosity and mischief, his bright green eyes taking in everything around him with the intensity of someone much older. Evelyn pressed the elevator button, her heart steady despite the significance of today's presentation. She had built her software security company from the ground up, and tonight's keynote would cement her position as one of the industry's most innovative minds. She didn't need anyone's validation anymore. She had proven herself through sleepless nights, brilliant code, and sheer determination. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing 2 figures already inside. Evelyn stepped forward before her brain could process what her eyes were seeing. Landon Mitchell stood against the far wall, his tall frame impeccable in a charcoal suit that had clearly been tailored to perfection. His dark hair was slightly longer than she remembered, and those penetrating green eyes that had once seen straight through her defenses were now wide with something between shock and recognition. Next to him stood a statuesque blonde woman in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Time seemed to crystallize in that small, confined space. Evelyn felt her breath catch, but she forced herself to step inside, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. She had faced boardrooms full of skeptical investors and hostile competitors. She could certainly handle 2.5 minutes in an elevator with her past. "Evelyn," Landon's voice was barely above a whisper, and she could hear the same slight rasp that used to make her stomach flutter when he whispered her name in the dark. "Landon." She kept her voice steady, professional. "Victoria." She nodded to the woman beside him, recognizing her from countless society pages and tech industry magazines. Victoria Steele offered a polite smile, but her sharp blue eyes were assessing, clearly trying to place why this woman with the baby commanded such a visceral reaction from her fiancé. Theo chose that moment to babble something incomprehensible but decidedly cheerful, reaching one small hand toward the shiny buttons on Evelyn's blazer. The innocent sound seemed to break whatever spell had fallen over the elevator. Landon's gaze shifted to the child in her arms, and Evelyn watched as understanding dawned across his features. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same unruly hair, the same determined set to the jaw, the same bright eyes that seemed to see everything. Landon started, but the words seemed to stick in his throat. "Beautiful," Victoria finished, though her voice had taken on a strange, distant quality. "How old is he?" 20 months, Evelyn replied, which was close enough to the truth without revealing the exact timeline that would make everything painfully obvious. But Landon was brilliant. He had always been brilliant, and she could practically see him doing the math. His face went pale, then flushed, and his hands clenched at his sides. The elevator continued its smooth ascent, each floor bringing them closer to a moment when they would have to step apart again, when this impossible reunion would end and real life would resume. But right now, in this suspended moment, everything felt possible and impossible at the same time. Theo, oblivious to the tension crackling around them, dropped his favorite toy, a small wooden airplane that Evelyn had bought him last week. It clattered to the floor and slid toward Landon's polished shoes. Without thinking, Landon crouched down and picked up the toy, his movements careful and deliberate. When he straightened and offered it back to Theo, the little boy reached out with both hands, grinning with the unrestrained joy that only children possessed. For just a moment, Landon's fingers brushed against Evelyn's as she helped guide the toy back into Theo's grasp. The contact was electric, sending a familiar warmth shooting up her arm and straight to her chest where her heart was beating far too fast. "Thank you," she managed, her voice softer than she had intended. The elevator chimed again. 40th floor, 41st, 42nd. Victoria cleared her throat delicately. "Darling, we should..." The doors opened with mechanical precision, revealing the bustling conference space beyond. People in expensive suits mingled with champagne glasses and business cards, their conversations creating a hum of ambient noise that seemed to belong to a different world entirely. Evelyn stepped toward the exit, then paused. Some impulses were too strong to ignore, and some moments demanded honesty, no matter how complicated the consequences. She turned back to face Landon, whose green eyes were still fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like they were the only two people in the world. "His name is Theo," she said quietly, just loud enough for him to hear over the conference noise. "Theo Mitchell Harper." The last part of the name hit Landon like a physical blow. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Victoria's champagne flute trembled in her perfectly manicured hand. Evelyn didn't wait for a response. She stepped out of the elevator, her head held high and her son secure in her arms, leaving behind a silence so profound it seemed to echo long after the doors slid shut. But as she walked toward the registration table, she could feel Landon's gaze following her, and she knew with absolute certainty that their story was far from over. The conference reception buzzed around Evelyn like white noise as she tried to focus on the conversation with potential investors. Theo sat contentedly in his portable high chair beside her, occasionally clapping his hands when the ambient chatter grew particularly animated. She had mastered the art of professional networking while managing motherhood, but tonight felt different. Every few minutes she found herself scanning the crowd, her pulse quickening whenever she caught a glimpse of dark hair or a tall silhouette. "Ms. Harper, your encryption protocols are revolutionary," said David Chen, a venture capitalist from San Francisco. "We'd love to discuss funding for your next phase of development." Evelyn smiled and handed him her business card, but her attention wavered when she spotted Victoria Steele near the bar, her blonde hair catching the light as she spoke animatedly into her phone. There was no sign of Landon. "Mama," Theo babbled, holding up a piece of the organic snack she'd packed for him. His green eyes sparkled with innocent joy, completely unaware that his entire world might be about to shift. "That's right, baby," she murmured, smoothing his hair. "You're such a good boy." 20 minutes later, she excused herself from the networking circle and made her way toward the ladies' room, needing a moment to collect her thoughts. The hallway was quieter, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of Elliott Bay. She was adjusting Theo's position in her arms when she heard footsteps behind her. "Evelyn." She turned slowly, her heart already recognizing the voice before her eyes confirmed what she knew. Landon stood a few feet away, his usually perfect composure cracked around the edges. His tie was slightly loosened and she could see the tension in his jaw. "Where's Victoria?" she asked, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "Taking calls, planning damage control for whatever story the media might spin about tonight." He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving her face. "I needed to talk to you. Alone." Theo chose that moment to reach toward Landon, his small hand opening and closing in the universal baby gesture for pick-me-up. Evelyn felt her chest tighten at the instinctive way her son seemed drawn to this man he'd never met. "He doesn't know you," she said softly, more to herself than to Landon. "But he's mine." It wasn't a question. Landon's voice was rough with emotion. "Those eyes, the way he holds his head, God, Evelyn, why didn't you tell me?" She shifted Theo to her other arm, buying herself time. "Because you made it clear that your future didn't include me. You were building an empire, remember? No distractions, no complications. You were never a distraction." The words came out fierce, almost angry. "You were everything. You still are." The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. Evelyn felt the familiar pull of his intensity, the way he had always been able to make her feel like the center of the universe with just his words. "That's not fair," she whispered. "You don't get to say things like that now. Not when you're wearing another woman's engagement ring." Landon looked down at his hand, as if he'd forgotten the platinum band was there. When he looked back up, his expression was pained. "Victoria and I, it's complicated. It seems pretty simple to me." Evelyn straightened her shoulders. "You're getting married. Congratulations." "I don't love her." The words tumbled out raw and unfiltered. "I thought I could learn to. Thought it would be enough to build a life with someone who understood the business, who fit into that world. But seeing you tonight, Evelyn, I never stopped loving you." Theo began to fuss, sensing the emotional undercurrents even if he couldn't understand them. Evelyn bounced him gently, using the familiar motion to ground herself. "Love isn't enough, Landon. We proved that 2.5 years ago. We were different people then. Scared, stubborn kids who thought we had to choose between love and ambition." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. Look what you've accomplished. You built something incredible, became everything you wanted to be. And I built an empire but forgot what I was building it for. You built it for Victoria's world, for society galas and merger announcements and perfectly orchestrated photo opportunities. No, his voice was firm. I built it thinking it would fill the space you left behind. But nothing could do that, Evelyn. Nothing. Theo reached out again, this time managing to grab a handful of Landon's tie. Instead of pulling away, Landon carefully extracted his son's tiny fingers, his touch gentle and reverent. Can I? He gestured toward Theo, his meaning clear. Evelyn hesitated. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was dangerous territory, that letting Landon hold their son would only complicate an already impossible situation. But Theo was looking at Landon with such open curiosity, and there was something heartbreaking about the careful hope in Landon's expression. He's not used to strangers, she warned, but she was already transferring Theo into Landon's waiting arms. Landon held his son like he was made of spun glass, his large hands surprisingly sure and gentle. Theo studied his father's face with the intense concentration that babies reserved for new discoveries, then smiled. A real, delighted smile that lit up his entire face. "Hi there, little man," Landon whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your dad." The words broke something inside Evelyn's chest. She watched as Landon's whole body seemed to relax for the first time since she'd known him, as if he'd been holding his breath for years and could finally exhale. This was what she'd been afraid of. Not that Landon would reject Theo, but that he would love him instantly and completely, making it impossible for her to protect her son from the inevitable complications. "He likes you," she said unnecessarily, because Theo was now patting Landon's cheek with obvious fascination. "He's perfect." Landon's voice was wonderstruck. "Absolutely perfect. How do you do it? How do you work and travel and manage everything alone?" "Because I had to." The words came out sharper than she intended. "Because when I found out I was pregnant, I was alone. Because you never called, never reached out, never gave me a reason to think you'd want to know. I called." The quiet admission made her freeze. "Every day for the first month, you'd blocked my number. The memory rushed back, her pain and pride demanding a clean break, her finger hovering over the block button on her phone. "I needed space to figure things out. I know. And I should have tried harder, should have fought for us instead of respecting your walls." He looked down at Theo, who was now playing with the buttons on his shirt. "But I'm here now, Evelyn. However complicated, however messy, I'm here now." The sound of heels clicking against marble interrupted them. Victoria appeared around the corner, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes sharp with assessment. "There you are," she said to Landon, though her gaze flickered meaningfully to the baby in his arms. "The keynote is about to begin. We should take our seats." Landon's jaw tightened, but he carefully transferred Theo back to Evelyn. Their hands brushed again during the exchange, and this time neither of them pulled away quickly. "This isn't over," he said quietly. His words meant only for her. "Yes, it is." But even as she said it, Evelyn could feel the lie in her bones. "It has to be." She walked away before he could respond, her heels echoing in the hallway as she carried her son back toward a life that suddenly felt like it was built on shifting sand. The keynote presentation went flawlessly, but Evelyn barely remembered giving it. She stood on the stage, delivering her carefully rehearsed speech about the future of cybersecurity, while her mind replayed every moment in that hallway. The way Landon had held Theo with such reverence, the raw honesty in his voice when he'd admitted to calling her, the look in his eyes when he'd said he never stopped loving her. Now, 2 hours later, she sat in her hotel room overlooking the Seattle waterfront, Theo finally asleep in his travel crib after an evening that had overstimulated them both. She'd changed into comfortable yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her presentation armor replaced by the soft clothes that reminded her she was a mother first, everything else second. Her phone buzzed against the marble nightstand. An unknown Seattle number. "Hello? It's me." Landon's voice was softer over the phone, more intimate somehow. "I got your number from the conference directory. I hope that's okay." Evelyn closed her eyes and leaned against the headboard. "It's late, Landon. I know. I couldn't sleep. Victoria's in her own room planning the engagement party we're supposed to have next month." His laugh was bitter. "She's choosing flowers for a wedding that should never happen." "Then don't let it happen." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "It's not that simple. Her father's company is our biggest investor. Breaking the engagement doesn't just end our relationship. It could destroy everything I've built." Evelyn felt a familiar stab of disappointment, So this is about money. No. His voice was fierce. This is about 20,000 people who work for companies under my umbrella. This is about innovations that could change the world. About responsibilities I can't just walk away from. But Evelyn, seeing you tonight, holding our son, nothing else matters compared to that. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights reflected in the water. Our son has been fine without you for 20 months. He doesn't need complications. Maybe not. But I need him, and I need you. The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. Need and want are different things, Landon. You want the fantasy of us, the idea of a ready-made family that fits into your perfect life. But reality is messier. Reality is Theo crying at 3 a.m. with an ear infection. Reality is business trips where I have to choose between my career and being present for every milestone. Reality is, "Can I see you tomorrow?" The question interrupted her carefully constructed argument. What? Tomorrow? Can I see you and Theo? Not at a conference, not with Victoria hovering, just us. Evelyn pressed her forehead against the cool glass. I fly back to Portland in the morning. Then I'll come to Portland. Landon. One day, Evelyn. Give me one day to prove that I'm not the same man who let you walk away before. Give me a chance to be Theo's father. She thought about the way Theo had reached for him, the instant connection that seemed to transcend genetics. Her son deserved the chance to know his father, didn't he? Even if it complicated everything. One day, she found herself saying, but I have rules. Anything. This isn't about us. It's about Theo. If you want to be part of his life, it has to be consistent. No dropping in when it's convenient and disappearing when it gets difficult. Understood. And Victoria can't know. Not yet. Not until you figure out what you really want. There was a long pause. She already suspects. Suspects what? That Theo is mine? She's not stupid, Evelyn. She saw the way I looked at him, the way he looks like me. She's been making calls all evening, trying to find information about you. A chill ran down Evelyn's spine. Victoria Steele had the resources and connections to make Evelyn's life very complicated if she chose to. What kind of information? Your company's financial records, investor lists, client contracts. She's looking for leverage. Leverage for what? To make sure you stay out of our lives permanently. Evelyn sank into the chair by the window, suddenly feeling exhausted. Maybe she's right. Maybe I should. Don't you dare. Landon's voice was sharp. Don't let her scare you away. I won't let her hurt you or Theo. How can you protect us when you can't even break up with her? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Evelyn could hear traffic in the background on his end, the sounds of the city that never quite slept. I'm working on it, he said finally. There are contracts, legal obligations, board meetings that need to happen, but I'm working on it. How long? I don't know. Weeks, maybe months. That's too long. Evelyn's voice was firm. I won't let Theo get attached to someone who might disappear again. I won't let myself get attached either. You already are attached. His voice was gentle but certain. I could see it tonight, the way you looked at me when I held him. You felt it too, didn't you? That rightness, like we were always meant to be a family. She had felt it. That was the problem. For just a moment watching Landon hold their son, she'd seen a future she'd convinced herself was impossible. A future where Theo had both parents, where she didn't have to carry every burden alone, where love was enough to overcome practical obstacles. But love hadn't been enough before. Send me your address, Landon said. I'll drive down tomorrow morning. Landon, please, let me try to be the man you both deserve. Evelyn looked over at Theo's crib, where her son slept peacefully, completely trusting that she would make the right decisions for both of them. The weight of that responsibility had never felt heavier. Okay, she whispered. But if you hurt him, if you make promises you can't keep, I will make sure you never see him again. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't a game, Landon. This is my son's heart we're talking about. He's already been through enough upheaval in his short life. What do you mean? Evelyn hesitated, then decided he deserved the truth. I was sick when he was born. Really sick. Complications from the pregnancy that lasted months. Theo spent his first few weeks thinking his grandmother was his mother because I was in and out of the hospital so much. Evelyn, his voice was stricken. Why didn't you call you and say what? Hi, remember me? The woman you couldn't commit to? Well, surprise, you have a son and I might die, so could you please rearrange your empire-building schedule to help raise him? Yes, exactly that. The simple response caught her off guard. You would have come. I would have dropped everything. Hospital bedside vigils, middle-of-the-night feedings, diaper changes, doctor appointments, all of it. I would have been there for all of it. Tears stung her eyes, and she was grateful he couldn't see them. Well, it's too late for that now. It's not too late for tomorrow. She closed her eyes, feeling the familiar tug-of-war between hope and self-preservation. Tomorrow is just one day. Tomorrow is a beginning. After she hung up, Evelyn sat in the dark hotel room for a long time, listening to Theo's soft breathing and watching the city lights blur through her tears. She'd built a good life for them, a safe life. Tomorrow, she was about to risk all of that for a man who was still engaged to someone else. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Landon had whispered, "Hi there, little man," to their son, like he'd been waiting his whole life for that moment. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 o'clock, and Evelyn's heart jumped despite her attempts to stay calm. She'd spent the morning cleaning her already spotless townhouse in Portland's Pearl District, changing outfits twice, and rehearsing conversations that would probably never happen. Theo sat in his high chair, happily smearing banana across his tray while wearing the navy polo shirt she'd chosen because it brought out his eyes. Through the peephole, she could see Landon standing on her front porch looking unexpectedly nervous. Gone was the polished conference attire. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a gray sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. In his hands, he carried what appeared to be a gift bag. "Da-da-da," Theo babbled from the kitchen, the meaningless syllables hitting Evelyn like a punch to the chest. She opened the door, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. In the morning light, she could see the exhaustion around Landon's eyes, as if he hadn't slept any better than she had. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." She stepped back to let him in, hyper-aware of how domestic this felt, how dangerous. He just finished breakfast. Fair warning, he's in a mood to test gravity with everything he can get his hands on. Landon smiled, his first real smile since yesterday, and followed her into the open-concept living space. Evelyn's home was warm and inviting, filled with natural light and carefully chosen pieces that spoke of comfort rather than ostentation. Children's books were scattered across the coffee table, and a basket of toys sat in the corner next to a wall of built-in bookshelves. "This is beautiful," he said, taking in the space. "It feels like home." "It is home." There was a protective edge to her voice that she couldn't quite suppress. Theo spotted the newcomer and immediately began bouncing in his high chair, arms outstretched and face lighting up with recognition. The enthusiastic greeting clearly surprised Evelyn. Her son was usually cautious around strangers. "Hey, buddy," Landon said, approaching slowly. "Remember me?" "Ba ba ba," Theo responded, clapping his sticky hands together. "I brought you something." Landon held up the gift bag, then looked at Evelyn for permission. "Is it okay?" She nodded, curious despite herself. Landon reached into the bag and pulled out a beautifully crafted wooden train set. Not the cheap plastic kind sold in big box stores, but hand-carved pieces that looked like heirloom toys. "I know he's still young for it," Landon said, suddenly uncertain. "But I don't know what 20-month-olds like. He loves trains," Evelyn said softly, watching Theo's eyes go wide with excitement. "How did you?" "Lucky guess." But his smile suggested it was more than that. "Can I get him out of there?" Evelyn nodded again and watched as Landon carefully unbuckled Theo from his high chair. Their son went willingly, patting Landon's shoulder with banana-sticky hands and babbling a stream of nonsense that sounded almost conversational. "Let's clean you up first, little man," Landon said, carrying Theo to the sink. "Evelyn, do you have a washcloth?" The scene was so naturally domestic that it made Evelyn's chest tight. Landon washed Theo's hands and face with gentle efficiency, as if he'd done it hundreds of times before. Theo submitted to the cleaning with unusual patience, studying his father's face with intense concentration. "There we go. Much better." Landon carried Theo to the living room, settling cross-legged on the floor with their son in his lap. "Now, let's see about these trains." For the next hour, Evelyn watched something magical unfold. Landon's entire demeanor transformed as he played with Theo. The careful businessman disappeared, replaced by someone patient and silly and completely devoted to making a toddler laugh. He built elaborate train tracks across her hardwood floors, complete with sound effects and dramatic crashes that sent Theo into fits of giggles. "He's never this engaged with strangers," Evelyn said, settling on the couch with her coffee. "Usually he needs time to warm up to people." "Maybe it's not strange to him," Landon replied, helping Theo stack wooden blocks into an increasingly precarious tower. "Maybe some connections are just natural." The tower fell with a satisfying crash, and Theo clapped with delight before immediately starting to rebuild. Persistent, Landon observed. I wonder where he gets that from. Definitely not from me, Evelyn said dryly, earning a laugh from Landon that made her stomach flutter in ways she'd almost forgotten. Her phone buzzed with a text message. The name on the screen made her blood run cold. Victoria Steele. We need to talk. I know about the baby. Portland in 2 hours. Evelyn's face must have shown her panic because Landon immediately looked up from the trains. What is it? She showed him the phone. His jaw tightened as he read the message, and she watched his protective instincts kick in. She can't just show up here, he said, his voice low and fierce. This is your home. She's resourceful. If she wants to find me, she'll find me. Evelyn set the phone aside with shaking hands. Maybe it's better to get this over with. No. Landon carefully moved Theo to his playmat and stood up. I won't let her intimidate you. You're not in a position to stop her, Landon. You're still engaged to her. The reminder hit its mark. Landon ran his hands through his hair, looking more frustrated than she'd ever seen him. I've been trying to find a way out that doesn't destroy everything I've built, but she's not making it easy. Every conversation we have, she finds new ways to remind me what I'd be giving up. Maybe you should listen to her. The words came out more bitter than Evelyn intended. Maybe a ready-made family isn't worth losing your empire. Don't say that. Landon knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. Don't you dare doubt what this means to me. Evelyn, I would give up everything. Every company, every dollar, every connection to be with you and Theo. The only reason I'm trying to find another way is because I want to be able to provide for you both, to give Theo every advantage. He doesn't need advantages. He needs stability. He needs parents who choose him over everything else. Then let me choose him. Let me choose both of you. Theo chose that moment to crawl over to them, pulling himself up on Landon's leg with a determined expression. Without hesitation, Landon scooped him up, and Theo immediately snuggled against his chest with a contentment that made Evelyn's heart ache. Look at him, Landon whispered. He knows, Evelyn. Somehow he knows I'm his father. She could see it too. The way Theo relaxed in Landon's arms, the way he kept touching Landon's face as if memorizing it. Her independent, cautious son had never bonded with anyone this quickly, not even with her own father. 2 hours, she said, checking her phone again. Victoria will be here in 2 hours, and she's going to try to tear apart everything good about today. Then we don't waste the time we have. Landon stood, still holding Theo. Show me everything. His room, his favorite books, his bedtime routine. Show me how to be his father. The next 90 minutes passed in a blur of ordinary moments that felt extraordinary. Landon changed his first diaper with surprising competence, read Goodnight Moon with theatrical flair that made Theo giggle, and learned that their son's favorite game was peekaboo played with increasingly elaborate hiding spots. But as the clock ticked closer to Victoria's arrival, tension crept back into the room like a gathering storm. I should go, Landon said reluctantly, watching Theo toddle around the living room with single-minded determination. I don't want to make this harder for you. Running away won't solve anything. Evelyn's voice was steadier than she felt. She's coming here because she knows about Theo, which means she's already made her decision about what she wants to do with that information. What do you think she wants? Before Evelyn could answer, the doorbell rang. They both froze and Theo looked up from his toys with curious eyes. I guess we're about to find out, Evelyn said, smoothing her sweater and walking toward the door that would either open to their future or destroy it completely. Victoria Steele stood on Evelyn's doorstep like a designer-clad storm cloud, her platinum blonde hair perfectly styled despite the 2-hour drive from Seattle. She wore a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than most people's cars, and her blue eyes were sharp with calculated assessment as they swept over Evelyn's more casual attire. Ms. Harper. Her voice was crisp, professional. Thank you for agreeing to see me. I didn't agree to anything, Evelyn replied, but she stepped aside to let Victoria enter. Behind her, she could hear Theo's happy babbling and the sound of wooden trains rolling across hardwood floors. Victoria's gaze immediately found Landon, who had risen from the floor where he'd been playing with Theo. The sight of her fiancé in domestic bliss with another woman and child created a crack in her composed facade, so brief that someone less observant might have missed it. Darling, she said to Landon, her tone carrying just a hint of steel beneath the endearment. I thought you were handling business meetings in Portland today. Change of plans, he replied, moving protectively closer to where Theo was still playing, oblivious to the tension crackling through the room. Victoria's attention shifted to the toddler, and Evelyn watched her take in every detail. The unruly dark hair, the green eyes, the determined set of the jaw that was unmistakably Mitchell. When Theo looked up and grinned at the new visitor with his father's charming smile, Victoria's mask slipped entirely. "He's beautiful," she said, and for a moment her voice carried genuine emotion. "How old did you say he was?" 20 months, Evelyn answered carefully. 20 months. Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. "Which would make him conceived around, when was it you two broke up? February of 2023? The mathematical precision of the question hung in the air like an accusation. Evelyn felt her protective instincts surge. "What exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact." Victoria settled gracefully into the armchair across from the couch, crossing her legs with deliberate elegance. "Your son is Landon's child. The resemblance is undeniable, and the timeline fits perfectly." Landon moved closer to Evelyn, his presence both comforting and concerning. "Victoria, this isn't necessary." "Oh, but it is." Victoria's laugh was crystalline and cold. "You see, Evelyn, I've done my research. Your company, while innovative, is still relatively small. Your investors are cautious. Your contracts are project-based, and your financial stability depends entirely on maintaining your reputation in a very competitive field." The implicit threat was unmistakable. Evelyn felt ice form in her stomach, but she kept her voice steady. And I could destroy all of that with a few well-placed phone calls." Victoria examined her perfectly manicured nails. "Technology is such an insular industry, isn't it? Word travels fast when someone's professional judgment comes into question." "You're threatening her." Landon's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm protecting our future," Victoria corrected. "The future we've planned, the merger we've announced, the life we've built together. I won't let one night of nostalgia destroy everything we've worked toward." Evelyn's anger finally overrode her caution. "One night? Is that what you think this is?" "Isn't it?" Victoria's smile was predatory. "Landon tells me your relationship ended badly years ago. He's moved on, built an empire, found someone who complements his ambitions, and now, conveniently, you reappear with a child, hoping to cash in on his success. Get out." Evelyn's voice was low, but fierce. "Get out of my house right now. I'm afraid I'm not finished." Victoria pulled a tablet from her purse and swiped to open a document. "I've prepared a proposal that I think you'll find quite generous." She turned the screen toward Evelyn, who found herself looking at what appeared to be a legal contract. $5 million, Victoria said conversationally, "in exchange for your agreement to relocate, perhaps back to your home state of Colorado, and to limit Landon's contact with the child to occasional visits. Supervised, of course." The blood drained from Evelyn's face. "You want to pay me to disappear? I want to pay you to be reasonable. Landon has responsibilities, a company to run, a wedding to plan. He can't be distracted by playing house with someone from his past." Theo, sensing the shift in energy, began to fuss. Landon immediately moved to comfort him, scooping their son into his arms with practiced ease. The sight of them together seemed to drive Victoria's desperation to new heights. "He'll get bored," she said, her voice becoming sharper. "Men like Landon always do. The novelty of fatherhood will wear off, and he'll resent the burden you've placed on him. Better to take the money now while he's still feeling sentimental." "Stop talking about me like I'm not here," Landon said, his voice carrying an authority that made even Victoria pause. "And stop talking about my son like he's a problem to be solved." "Your son?" Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. "You've known about this child for exactly 24 hours and already you're ready to throw away everything we've built together?" "What we've built is a business arrangement," Landon replied, his honesty brutal in its simplicity. "What I have with Evelyn and Theo is a family." Victoria stood abruptly, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she began to pace. "A family? You barely know this woman anymore. People change, Landon. The girl you dated in college isn't the same person standing here today." "You're right," Evelyn said quietly, finding her voice again. "I'm not the same person I was then. I'm stronger now, more independent. I've built my own life, my own success. I don't need Landon's money or his name or his protection." She turned to face Victoria directly, her chin lifted with quiet dignity. "But you're wrong about one thing. I would never take money to keep my son away from his father. Not 5 million, not 50 million. Theo deserves to know who he is and where he comes from." "How noble," Victoria said sarcastically. "And what happens when the media finds out? When the gossip sites start running stories about Landon Mitchell's secret love child?" When our investors start questioning his judgment and stability, then they'll learn the truth, Landon said, settling Theo more comfortably in his arms. That I'm a man who takes responsibility for his actions and loves his family. Your family? Victoria's voice rose to a pitch that made Theo whimper. I'm your family. We're getting married in 3 months. We've planned a life together. We've planned a merger, Landon corrected. We've never planned a family. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. For a moment, her perfectly crafted mask fell away completely, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. I could have given you children, she whispered, but you didn't want them. You made that clear from the beginning. Children would complicate your career, interfere with your social obligations. Landon's voice was gentle but firm. There's nothing wrong with that choice, Victoria, but it's not the choice I want anymore. Victoria stared at him for a long moment, then at Evelyn, then at Theo, who was now reaching toward a toy train that had rolled under the coffee table. When she spoke again, her voice was controlled but carried an undertone of steel. I won't make this easy for you, she said to both of them. The engagement announcement has been made. The board expects this merger. If you think you can just walk away without consequences, you're both more naive than I thought. What kind of consequences? Evelyn asked, though she dreaded the answer. Victoria's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Did you know that Steel Industries holds the patents on 3 of the security protocols your little company uses? Did you know that our legal team has been looking for reasons to challenge those licensing agreements? The threat was clear and devastating. Evelyn's company depended on those protocols. Losing access to them would essentially destroy her business overnight. You can't do that, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I can do whatever is necessary to protect my interests. Victoria picked up her purse and coat, preparing to leave. You have 48 hours to consider my offer. After that, I'll assume you've chosen to fight this battle, and I promise you, both of you, that you'll regret that choice. She was halfway to the door when Theo suddenly called out, Mama! His little arms were outstretched toward Evelyn, and there was something so trusting, so innocent about the gesture that it stopped Victoria in her tracks. For just a moment, Evelyn thought she saw longing in the other woman's eyes, longing for something real and uncomplicated, something that couldn't be bought or negotiated or strategically planned. But the moment passed, and Victoria's expression hardened again. 48 hours, she repeated, and walked out into the gray Portland afternoon, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than words. The silence that followed Victoria's departure was deafening. Evelyn stood frozen by the window, watching the black sedan disappear down her tree-lined street, while Landon held Theo close, murmuring soft reassurances to their son who had picked up on the tension in the room. She's not bluffing, Evelyn said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Those patents. My entire security framework is built on technology her father's company developed. If she pulls those licenses, your company would be finished. Landon's voice was grim with understanding. Evelyn nodded, sinking onto the couch as the full weight of Victoria's threat settled over her. 5 years of work, 12 employees who depend on their jobs, clients who trust me to protect their data. She laughed bitterly. All destroyed because I fell in love with the wrong man and had his baby. Don't say that. Landon settled Theo in his playpen and moved to sit beside her. Don't you dare say loving me was wrong, or that Theo was a mistake. Wasn't it? Tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. Look where it's gotten us. You're trapped in an engagement to a woman who's willing to destroy innocent people to get what she wants. And I'm about to lose everything I've built because I was stupid enough to hope for 5 minutes that we could have a normal family. Landon reached for her hands, but she pulled away, standing and walking to the other side of the room. The physical distance felt safer than the comfort he offered. Maybe Victoria's right, Evelyn continued, her voice growing stronger with resolve. Maybe this is about nostalgia and convenience. Maybe I should take her money and move back to Colorado. Start over somewhere she can't touch me. You don't mean that, don't I? Evelyn turned to face him, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. What's the alternative, Landon? You break off your engagement, lose your company, and we all end up broke and bitter? At least if I take the money, Theo will be financially secure. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for my mistakes. Landon stood as well, his jaw set with determination. There has to be another way. What way? You said yourself that breaking the engagement would destroy everything you've built. Your investors, your employees, your innovations, all of it depends on Steel Industries' backing. Landon was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the gray Portland sky. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful, almost calculating. What if it doesn't? What do you mean? What if there's a way to separate my companies from steel industries without destroying them? He turned back to her, and she could practically see his brilliant mind working through possibilities. Victoria said the board expects the merger, but what if I could give them something better? Like what? Like independence. Like growth that doesn't depend on her father's money or influence. His excitement was building, the way it used to when he'd stumbled onto a breakthrough solution. I've been so focused on playing by their rules, on maintaining relationships and keeping investors happy, that I forgot what made me successful in the first place, which was taking risks, building something from nothing, creating value instead of just shifting money around. He moved to his laptop bag and pulled out his phone, already scrolling through contacts. I need to make some calls. Landon, wait. Evelyn's voice stopped him. Even if you could somehow untangle your business from Victoria's, what about us? What about Theo? He looked up from his phone, his green eyes intense with emotion. What about you? This isn't just about business deals and mergers. This is about real life, about what happens after the lawyers and accountants finish their work. She gestured toward Theo, who was contentedly stacking blocks in his playpen. He's not a problem to be solved or a contract to be negotiated. He's a little boy who needs stability and consistency. And love. Don't forget love. Love isn't enough. The words came out harsher than she intended, but they needed to be said. I loved you before, and we still fell apart. We still hurt each other. What makes you think this time will be different? Landon set his phone aside and moved toward her slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. Because we're different people now. Because we've both learned what it means to lose something precious. Because now we have Theo, and he deserves parents who fight for their family instead of running from it. I'm not running. Yes, you are. His voice was gentle, but firm. You're so afraid of getting hurt again that you're willing to accept Victoria's threats instead of fighting for what we could have together. Evelyn felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. What if we try and it doesn't work? What if we put Theo through the chaos of blending our lives together and then we realize we're still the same incompatible people we were before? Then we figure it out, together. Landon reached out tentatively, and this time she didn't pull away when he took her hands. Evelyn, I know I hurt you before. I know I chose my ambitions over our relationship, and I've regretted that choice every day for the past 2.5 years. Words are easy. Then let me show you with actions. He squeezed her hands gently. Give me 48 hours. That's all I'm asking. 48 hours to prove that I can protect you and Theo, that I can untangle the mess I've made, and that I'm ready to put our family first. And if you can't, then I'll go with you to Victoria's lawyers. I'll make sure you get everything you need to start over somewhere safe, and I'll accept whatever visitation arrangement you think is best for Theo. The offer was more generous than she'd expected, more painful too, because it meant he was willing to lose them if it meant protecting them. Theo's babbling from his playpen interrupted the heavy moment. He was holding up a wooden train, offering it to them with the generous spirit that only children possessed. The simple gesture reminded them both of what they were really fighting for. 48 hours, Evelyn said finally. Relief flooded Landon's features. Thank you, but I have conditions. Name them. First, no empty promises. If you say you can do something, you better be absolutely certain you can deliver. I won't get Theo's hopes up only to disappoint him later. Agreed. Second, if this doesn't work, if Victoria destroys my company or your board revolts or any of a dozen other things go wrong, we don't blame each other. We focus on what's best for Theo and move forward as co-parents. Nothing more. The last condition clearly pained him, but he nodded. Understood. And third, she hesitated, then forced herself to continue. If we're going to try this, if we're really going to see if we can be a family, then we do it honestly. No more walls, no more protecting ourselves from getting hurt. We're either all in, or we're not in at all. All in, he said without hesitation. Evelyn, I am completely, utterly all in. The conviction in his voice made her chest tight with hope and terror in equal measure. She was about to bet everything, her heart, her future, Theo's stability, on a man who had already broken her trust once. But as she looked at Theo, contentedly playing with the trains his father had brought him, she realized some gambles were worth taking. Okay, she whispered. 48 hours. Landon's smile was brilliant and grateful, and tinged with the kind of determination that had built empires. I won't let you down, either of you. As he pulled out his phone and began making calls that would either save or destroy everything they'd worked for, Evelyn couldn't help but think that 48 hours had never felt simultaneously so long and so impossibly short. Outside, storm clouds were gathering over Portland, and she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever came next would change all of their lives forever. 24 hours into Landon's 48-hour promise, Evelyn's townhouse had been transformed into a war room. Her dining table was covered with laptops, legal documents, and the remnants of takeout containers from the Chinese restaurant down the street. Landon hadn't left since yesterday afternoon, working through the night while Theo napped and played around them, oblivious to the battle being fought for his future. Marcus just confirmed it, Landon said, hanging up his third conference call of the morning. Chen Industries is willing to back out of their exclusivity agreement with Steele if we can offer them better terms on the AI integration project. Evelyn looked up from her own laptop, where she'd been reviewing her company's contracts with a fine-tooth comb. That's the third investor you've flipped in 12 hours. Victoria's going to notice the pattern soon. She already has. Landon's phone buzzed with another call. That's probably her now. Instead of answering, he let it go to voicemail and turned back to the spreadsheet they'd been building. The past day had revealed just how extensively Steele Industries had woven themselves into Landon's business empire, but it had also shown that most of those connections were based on convenience rather than necessity. The Yamamoto deal is the key, he continued, highlighting a row of numbers. If I can secure their backing independently, I can buy out Steele's stake in the holding company. It'll cost me nearly everything I have in liquid assets, but it's doable. And then what? Evelyn asked, though she was beginning to see the bigger picture. You'll be free of Victoria, but you'll also be broke. Not broke, just starting over. His smile was rueful but determined. I built something from nothing once. I can do it again. Theo chose that moment to toddle over, clutching his wooden train and babbling what sounded like an elaborate story about its adventures. Landon automatically reached down to scoop him up, settling their son on his lap while continuing to work. The easy domesticity of the gesture made Evelyn's heart clench. Over the past 24 hours, she'd watched Landon seamlessly integrate himself into their daily routine, helping with meals, reading bedtime stories, even handling a middle-of-the-night diaper change when Theo had woken up fussy. He approached fatherhood the same way he approached business, with complete focus and an instinct for what needed to be done. There's something else, she said, closing her laptop and turning to face him fully. I've been looking into those patents Victoria threatened me with, and they're not as ironclad as she made them seem. The original licensing agreements include clauses that would allow me to negotiate alternative arrangements if Steele Industries tries to terminate without cause. Landon's eyes sharpened with interest. Which means her threats might be bluster. Expensive, complicated bluster that would tie us up in court for months, but not the immediate death sentence she made it sound like. That's brilliant. Landon shifted Theo to his other knee, his excitement building. If we can neutralize her leverage over your company while I extract myself from Steele Industries, we might actually have a chance at this. Evelyn finished the thought, feeling a cautious optimism she'd been afraid to acknowledge. Their planning was interrupted by the doorbell. Through the front window, they could see a delivery truck parked outside, and Evelyn's stomach dropped as she realized what this might be. I'll get it, Landon said, but she was already moving toward the door. The delivery required a signature, and the return address confirmed her fears. Steele Industries Legal Department. The envelope was thick, official, and ominous. Let me see it, Landon said as she closed the door. Inside was a formal cease and desist letter, demanding that Evelyn's company stop using any technology covered by Steele patents within 72 hours or face immediate legal action. But more disturbing was the second document, a motion for emergency custody evaluation, claiming that Evelyn was an unfit mother who was exposing her child to unstable and potentially dangerous situations. She's going after Theo, Evelyn whispered, the papers shaking in her hands. She's actually trying to take my son away from me. Landon's face went white as he read over her shoulder. This is insane. She can't seriously think a judge would. She doesn't have to win, Evelyn interrupted, the full scope of Victoria's strategy becoming clear. She just has to tie me up in legal proceedings long enough to destroy my business and drain my resources. And if she can plant enough doubt about my parenting. Theo, sensing the shift in mood, began to fuss in Landon's arms. Automatically, both parents moved to comfort him, but the legal documents remained like a poison between them. We need a lawyer, Landon said. The best family attorney in Portland. With what money? Evelyn's voice was bitter. I've already spent most of my savings trying to keep the company afloat during the slow season. And if she succeeds in pulling those patents, then we use my money. Landon, if you liquidate everything to buy out Steel Industries, you won't have money for lawyers either. They stared at each other across the dining table, the weight of impossible choices settling over them like a shroud. Outside, the Portland rain had started again, drumming against the windows with increasing intensity. Landon's phone rang. This time he answered. Mitchell. Even from across the room, Evelyn could hear Victoria's voice, sharp and satisfied. I trust you've received my gifts by now. Victoria, this has gone too far. Going after Evelyn's parental rights? That's not protecting your interests. That's vindictive. It's strategic. Ms. Harper clearly can't provide a stable environment for that child while she's wrapped up in legal battles and financial ruin. I'm simply ensuring that the boy's welfare is protected. By trying to take him away from his mother? By making sure he's placed somewhere appropriate while the adults sort out their messy personal lives? Victoria's voice was cold, businesslike. Of course, all of this unpleasantness could be avoided if Ms. Harper reconsidered my original offer. I might even be persuaded to increase it to $7 million, given the additional complications. Evelyn snatched the phone from Landon's hand before he could respond. This is Evelyn. The woman herself. I trust you're beginning to understand the situation more clearly now. What I understand is that you're willing to traumatize an innocent child to get what you want. What kind of person does that? The kind who understands that sometimes short-term discomfort prevents long-term disaster. Victoria's tone remained infuriatingly calm. Your son will recover from a temporary disruption. Landon's companies might not recover from the chaos you're bringing into his life. You're wrong about him. Evelyn looked at Landon, who was listening intently while keeping Theo distracted with his toy train. He's stronger than you think, and he loves his son more than any business deal. Love. Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. How wonderfully naive. Love doesn't pay employees' salaries or fund research and development. Love doesn't protect people from hostile takeovers or market crashes. No, but it gives you something worth protecting those things for. The line was quiet for a long moment. When Victoria spoke again, her voice carried a strange note that Evelyn couldn't quite identify. You really believe that, don't you? You actually think love conquers all. I think love makes the fight worthwhile. Another pause. Longer this time. In the background, Evelyn could hear the sounds of an expensive restaurant, clinking glasses and polite conversation. 24 hours, Victoria said finally. That's how long you have before I file additional motions that will make today's documents look gentle. 24 hours to take the money and walk away, or I will systematically destroy everything you've built and everyone you care about. The line went dead. Evelyn set the phone down with hands that trembled only slightly. Across the room, Landon was watching her with a mixture of admiration and concern. 24 hours, she told him. Then we better get to work. He stood, settling Theo in his playpen with practiced ease, then moved to his laptop with the focused intensity she remembered from their college days. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he pulled up files, made calculations, sent messages to contacts around the world. What are you doing? Calling in every favor I've ever earned, he said without looking up. Victoria thinks she holds all the cards, but she's forgotten something important. Which is? Landon looked up then, his green eyes bright with determination and something that looked like love. She's forgotten that some things are worth losing everything for. As the Portland afternoon darkened into evening, they worked side by side, racing against Victoria's countdown clock and fighting for a future that seemed to slip further away with each passing hour. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Evelyn allowed herself to hope that love might actually be enough, if they were brave enough to bet everything on it. The Multnomah County Courthouse in downtown Portland buzzed with Monday morning activity as Evelyn walked through the metal detectors, Theo's car seat heavy in one hand and a worn leather briefcase in the other. She'd barely slept in the 18 hours since Victoria's final ultimatum, but her mind was sharp with purpose. Landon walked beside her, his usually perfect appearance showing signs of their marathon weekend. His tie slightly askew, shadows under his eyes, but his jaw set with unwavering determination. Ms. Harper, a woman in a navy suit, approached them in the lobby. I'm Jennifer Chen, your attorney. We spoke on the phone last night. Evelyn shook the lawyer's hand, grateful that Landon's contacts had managed to secure them representation on such short notice. Jennifer Chen had a reputation for being brilliant and ruthless in family court. qualities they desperately needed. The emergency hearing is in 20 minutes, Jennifer continued, as they made their way to the elevator. I've reviewed all the documents Victoria Steele filed, and I have to be honest. She's playing dirty, but she's playing smart. The allegations about instability and endangerment are carefully worded to sound serious without being easily disprovable. What are our chances? Landon asked. Better than they were yesterday thanks to the materials you provided. Jennifer smiled grimly. Financial records showing Miss Harper's business stability, character references from clients and colleagues, medical records proving excellent care for Theo. It all helps. But the real game changer is what you discovered about Ms. Steele's motivations. They exited the elevator on the 3rd floor, where the hallways hummed with the business of family court. Evelyn caught sight of Victoria near the courtroom entrance, surrounded by what appeared to be an army of expensive lawyers. She looked immaculate as always, her blonde hair in a perfect chignon, her cream-colored suit clearly custom-tailored. When their eyes met across the corridor, Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. Remember, Jennifer murmured as they approached the courtroom, this is about Theo's best interests. Whatever she throws at you in there, stay calm and focus on being the mother you are, loving, capable, and protective. Inside the courtroom, Theo sat quietly in his car seat, playing with his wooden train and occasionally babbling to himself. His innocent presence seemed to highlight the absurdity of the proceedings. How could anyone look at this happy, healthy child and claim his mother was unfit? Judge Patricia Hoffman took the bench promptly at 9 o'clock. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that suggested she'd seen every family court drama imaginable. This is an emergency hearing regarding the petition filed by Victoria Steele, requesting temporary custody evaluation of minor child Theodore Harper, Judge Hoffman announced. Ms. Steele, your attorney may proceed. Victoria's lead attorney, a man whose suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, stood and launched into a carefully crafted argument about Evelyn's alleged instability. He painted a picture of a single mother overwhelmed by business pressures, making reckless decisions that exposed her child to dangerous situations. Specifically, the volatile relationship with Landon Mitchell. Your Honor, the attorney continued, Ms. Harper has thrust this innocent child into the middle of a complicated business dispute involving millions of dollars and powerful interests. The child has been present during heated confrontations and has been used as a pawn in Ms. Harper's attempts to manipulate Mr. Mitchell. Evelyn felt anger rise in her chest, but Jennifer's firm hand on her arm reminded her to stay composed. Furthermore, the attorney said, pulling out a tablet, we have evidence that Ms. Harper's business is in serious financial jeopardy due to patent violations. She is facing lawsuits that could result in bankruptcy, leaving her unable to provide adequate care for the child. Objection, Jennifer said, rising smoothly. The financial claims are speculative and irrelevant to Ms. Harper's parenting abilities. Sustained, Judge Hoffman ruled. Stick to facts relevant to the child's welfare counselor. When it was Jennifer's turn, she stood with quiet confidence. Your Honor, this case is not about child welfare. It's about a woman using the legal system as a weapon in a personal dispute. Victoria Steele is engaged to marry Mr. Mitchell, the father of Ms. Harper's child, and she views this family as a threat to her financial interests. Jennifer gestured toward Evelyn and Theo. Look at this child, Your Honor. He is clearly healthy, happy, and well cared for. His mother has provided excellent medical care, educational opportunities, and a stable, loving home. The only instability in his life has been introduced by Ms. Steele's attempts to separate him from his family. Your Honor, Jennifer continued, we have evidence that Ms. Steele offered Ms. Harper $7 million to relocate and limit the father's contact with his son. This isn't about protecting a child. This is about buying one. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Victoria's perfectly composed mask flickered for just a moment. Do you have proof of this alleged offer? Judge Hoffman asked. Jennifer nodded. We have recorded phone conversations and documented threats. But more importantly, we have testimony from the father himself about Ms. Steele's motivations. Landon stood when called to the witness stand, his presence commanding even in the sterile courtroom environment. Under Jennifer's questioning, he methodically dismantled Victoria's narrative, explaining how she had threatened Evelyn's business as leverage, how she had tried to use money to separate him from his son, and how her actions were motivated by protecting a business merger rather than child welfare. Mr. Mitchell, Jennifer asked, in your observation, has Ms. Harper ever done anything that endangered your son's well-being? Never, Landon said firmly. Evelyn is an exceptional mother. She's patient, devoted, and incredibly protective of Theo. Every decision she makes is based on what's best for him. And what is your intention regarding your relationship with your son? To be his father in every way that matters, to support him and his mother, to be present for every milestone, and to provide the stable family environment he deserves, even if that means sacrificing your business relationship with Ms. Steele? Landon looked directly at Victoria when he answered, especially if it means that. Victoria's attorney tried to damage Landon's credibility during cross-examination, but his answers remained steady and consistent. When Evelyn took the stand, she spoke with quiet dignity about building her business while raising Theo alone, about the challenges and rewards of single motherhood, and about her hopes for Theo's future. Ms. Harper, Victoria's attorney asked during his cross-examination, isn't it true that your relationship with Mr. Mitchell ended badly years ago due to irreconcilable differences? Yes, Evelyn admitted, but we're different people now. We've both grown up. And you don't think bringing the instability of a rekindled romance into your child's life poses risks? Evelyn thought carefully before answering. The only instability my son has faced recently has come from people who are trying to keep his family apart. Love doesn't create instability. It creates security. When all the testimony was complete, Judge Hoffman called a brief recess to review the evidence. Evelyn sat in the hallway, holding Theo while he napped against her shoulder, drawing comfort from his warm weight and peaceful breathing. You did great in there, Landon said softly, settling beside her on the uncomfortable courthouse bench. Did we do enough? Before he could answer, Victoria approached them. Her legal team hung back, giving her space for what appeared to be a private conversation. Ms. Harper, she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp confidence. Might I speak with you privately? Evelyn looked at Landon, who nodded reluctantly. They moved to a quiet alcove near the windows where Victoria stood for a long moment just watching Theo sleep. He's beautiful, she said finally. Peaceful. What do you want, Victoria? Victoria was quiet for another moment, then surprised Evelyn by sitting down on the bench beside her. Without her army of lawyers and power suits as armor, she looked smaller, more human. I want to know what it feels like, Victoria said quietly. What feels like? To love someone more than your own ambitions. To look at a child and know you'd give up everything to protect them. Victoria's voice was almost wondering. I've spent my entire life building walls, making strategic alliances, protecting my interests. I thought love was just another kind of weakness. Evelyn studied the other woman's profile, seeing something vulnerable beneath the polished surface. It's not weakness, it's the opposite. I know that now. Victoria turned to look at her directly. Watching Landon these past few days, seeing how he changed the moment he held your son, I realized I've never inspired that kind of devotion in anyone. I've never felt it myself. Victoria, I'm dropping the custody petition, Victoria said abruptly. And the patent threats. All of it. Evelyn felt her breath catch. Why? Victoria's smile was sad but genuine. Because some things are more important than winning. And because that little boy deserves parents who love him more than they fear losing. When they returned to the courtroom, Victoria's attorney stood to address the judge. Your Honor, my client wishes to withdraw all petitions and dismiss this case. She has reconsidered the evidence and concluded that the child's best interests are served by remaining with his mother. Judge Hoffman looked skeptical but pleased. Very well. Case dismissed. Ms. Harper, your son will remain in your custody. As they left the courthouse an hour later, Evelyn felt like she could breathe fully for the first time in days. Theo was awake now, babbling happily, and reaching for the pigeons that strutted across the courthouse steps. I can't believe it's over, she said. It's not over, Landon corrected, taking her free hand in his. It's just beginning. They walked toward his car, their future uncertain, but theirs to decide. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. 3 weeks after the courthouse victory, Evelyn's townhouse had returned to its peaceful rhythm. But everything felt different now. The dining table was no longer covered with legal documents and crisis management plans. Instead, it held the remnants of a family breakfast. Theo's colorful blocks and Landon's laptop where he'd been working remotely, more often than not. The Yamamoto deal closed this morning, Landon announced, looking up from his screen with a tired but satisfied smile. I'm officially free of Steel Industries. Evelyn paused in loading the dishwasher, a plate halfway to its destination. Free but broke? Free and starting over, he corrected, closing the laptop and moving to help her with the dishes, but with the best possible motivation. Theo, who had been contentedly destroying a tower of blocks, suddenly stood and toddled over to Landon with his arms outstretched. Over the past 3 weeks, their son had developed an obvious preference for his father's company, often crying when Landon left for meetings and lighting up like sunshine when he returned. Da 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 da, Theo babbled, the syllables getting closer to an actual word each day. I think he's trying to say daddy, Evelyn observed, watching Landon scoop up their son with the natural ease that still surprised her. We've been practicing, Landon admitted with a grin that made him look boyish. Along with Mama, More, and Train. The domestic scene was interrupted by Evelyn's phone ringing. The caller ID made her stomach tighten reflexively, even though she knew Victoria was no longer a threat. It's her, she said. Landon's expression grew serious. Answer it. Evelyn? Victoria's voice was different, softer, less polished. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. It's fine. What can I do for you? I wanted to let you know that I'm moving to London. There's a position with a tech firm there that, well, it's a fresh start, away from everything that's happened here. Evelyn felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. That sounds like a good opportunity. It is, and I wanted to apologize properly this time. What I did was unforgivable, using a child as a weapon in my own insecurities. Victoria's voice wavered slightly. You were right, you know. Love does make the fight worthwhile. I just never learned how to fight for anything real. Victoria, I've also transferred the patent licenses to your company directly. Free and clear. Consider it my contribution to Theo's college fund. Evelyn nearly dropped the phone. Those patents were worth millions. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Some debts can't be paid with money, but this is a start. Victoria paused. Take care of them, Evelyn. Take care of each other. The line went quiet, and Evelyn stood staring at her phone for a long moment. When she looked up, Landon was watching her with curious concern. She transferred the patents to my company, Evelyn said, still processing the magnitude of the gesture. Just like that. Guilt is a powerful motivator, Landon said quietly, but so is recognizing something genuine when you see it. Theo chose that moment to attempt an escape from Landon's arms, squirming toward his toy box with single-minded determination. As Landon set him down, their son immediately began his favorite game of emptying every container he could reach. I've been thinking, Evelyn said, settling on the couch and watching their son's industrious destruction, about what happens next. With us, I mean. Landon joined her on the couch close enough that she could smell his cologne and feel the warmth radiating from his body. And what conclusion did you come to? That I'm terrified, she said honestly. This feels too good to be real. Too easy after everything we've been through. Easy? Landon laughed, but there was no humor in it. Evelyn, the past month has been the hardest of my life. Facing the possibility of losing you and Theo again, dismantling everything I'd built, starting over from scratch, none of that was easy. But it was right, she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. When you walked away from Victoria, when you chose us over your empire, that's when I knew this was real. Landon reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt both familiar and new. I should have made that choice years ago. I should have fought for us instead of letting my pride and ambition get in the way. We weren't ready then. I wasn't ready. Evelyn squeezed his hand. I was so focused on proving I could do everything myself that I couldn't accept help, even from someone who loved me. And now? She looked around the room, at Theo happily playing with blocks that his father had bought him, at the laptop where Landon had been building a new company while helping her navigate the patent transfer, at the life they were slowly, carefully constructing together. Now I know that being strong enough to do everything alone doesn't mean I have to. Theo suddenly appeared at Evelyn's knees, holding up his wooden train with an expression that clearly demanded attention. She lifted him onto the couch between them, and he immediately began showing them the intricate details of his favorite toy, his babbling taking on the cadence of a very serious explanation. He's going to be brilliant, Landon said, watching their son with obvious pride and wonder. He gets that from you. The brilliance, maybe, but the determination and independence, that's all you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Theo navigate the complex engineering of making his train perform impossible loops through the air. The late afternoon sun streaming through the windows caught the auburn highlights in their son's hair and made his green eyes sparkle with mischief. I want more, Evelyn said suddenly, then blushed at how that sounded. I mean more children, someday, when we're married, Landon finished softly. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and hope and the weight of everything they'd almost lost. "Is that a proposal?" she asked, her heart racing despite her attempt at lightness. "Not yet." Landon's smile was warm and patient. "When I propose to you properly, it won't be on a couch covered in Cheerios and toy trains. It'll be somewhere beautiful, with a ring I've spent weeks choosing, and words I've been practicing for months." "I don't need beautiful places or perfect words," Evelyn said, though her chest was tight with emotion at the thought that he was already planning their engagement. "I just need you. You have me. You've always had me, even when I was too stupid to admit it." He leaned over to kiss her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her eyes water. "But when I ask you to marry me, I want to do it right. I want to give you the proposal you deserve, the wedding you dream about, the life we should have had all along." Theo, apparently deciding their conversation was becoming too serious, began banging his train against the coffee table in a rhythm that was both musical and chaotic. The sound filled the room with joy and normalcy, and the promise of many such moments to come. "There is one thing I want to ask you now, though," Landon said, raising his voice slightly over Theo's percussion concert. "What's that?" "Move in with me, not here. I know this is your home and I don't want to disrupt Theo's routine, but let me find us a house. Something big enough for all of us, with a yard for him to play in and an office where you can work and room to grow." Evelyn felt her breath catch. It was a practical suggestion, sensible even, but it felt like the most romantic thing anyone had ever offered her. "Room to grow," she repeated, "for the company, for our family, for whatever comes next." Landon's green eyes were serious and hopeful. "I know it's fast, but Evelyn, we've already lost so much time. I don't want to waste another day living separately when we could be building something together." Theo suddenly stood up on the couch and launched himself toward Landon with the fearless confidence that only toddlers possessed. Landon caught him easily, their son's delighted laughter filling the room as they tumbled backward in an impromptu wrestling match. Watching them together, her past and her future, the love she'd lost and found again, Evelyn felt something settle into place in her chest. This was what she'd been fighting for without knowing it, what she'd been building toward through every difficult decision and sleepless night. "Yes," she said, and both of them looked at her with matching expressions of curious hope. "Yes to what?" Landon asked, settling Theo more securely in his lap. "Yes to the house. Yes to building something together. Yes to room to grow." She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Yes to all of it." Landon's answering smile was brilliant and grateful, and full of promises for the future. Theo clapped his hands as if he understood the significance of the moment, his joyful babbling providing the perfect soundtrack for their new beginning. 6 months later, the house in Portland's Laurelhurst neighborhood was everything Landon had promised and more. The craftsman-style home sat on a tree-lined street where neighbors actually knew each other's names, with a wraparound porch perfect for morning coffee, and a backyard where Theo could chase butterflies and learn to throw a ball. Evelyn's home office occupied the sunny room on the second floor, overlooking the garden where she could watch their son play while working on her rapidly expanding cybersecurity contracts. It had taken 3 months to find the perfect house and another 2 to make it feel like home. But now, as Evelyn stood in the kitchen preparing Theo's breakfast while coffee brewed and NPR provided gentle background commentary, she couldn't imagine living anywhere else. "Daddy!" Theo shouted from his high chair, the word clear and unmistakable now. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy!" "I hear you, buddy," came Landon's voice from the hallway, followed by the sound of his footsteps on the hardwood stairs. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, his hair still damp from the shower and his tie hanging loose around his neck. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, dropping a kiss on Evelyn's forehead before moving to ruffle Theo's hair. Their son, now 26 months old and full of opinions, immediately began regaling his father with a detailed account of his morning activities in the rapid-fire toddler speak that somehow made perfect sense to both parents. "He says the trucks outside woke him up, but he wasn't scared because he knew we were here," Evelyn translated, setting Theo's bowl of cut strawberries on his tray. "Is that right?" Landon asked Theo seriously. "And what else happened this morning?" "Mama sing," Theo announced proudly, then launched into his own off-key version of the lullaby Evelyn had been humming while getting dressed. "Your mama has a beautiful voice," Landon agreed, his eyes warm as they met Evelyn's across the kitchen, just like everything else about her. The easy intimacy of the moment still caught Evelyn by surprise sometimes. 6 months of shared mornings and bedtime routines, of navigating toddler tantrums and celebrating first words, of building both a business and a relationship from the ground up. It had created a foundation stronger than anything she'd imagined possible. "I have to drive up to Seattle today," Landon said, straightening his tie. "Final meeting with the investors about the AI security integration. We should know by tonight whether Chen Industries is moving forward with full partnership." "That's huge," Evelyn said, feeling the familiar flutter of excitement and pride. Landon's new company had grown faster than anyone expected, built on innovation and integrity rather than financial manipulation. "You've worked so hard for this." "We've worked hard for this," he corrected. "Your security protocols are what made the whole project possible." It was true. Their companies had become naturally intertwined over the past months, complementing each other's strengths and filling in weaknesses. Evelyn's boutique cybersecurity firm provided the specialized expertise that Landon's broader technology ventures needed, while his business development skills had helped her expand beyond her wildest projections. "Daddy go?" Theo asked with the heartbreaking expression he'd perfected for occasions when his father had to travel. "Just for the day," Landon promised, crouching beside the high chair. "I'll be back for dinner, and we can work on that puzzle we started yesterday. Promise?" "Promise." Landon held out his pinky finger, and Theo hooked his own tiny finger around it with the solemnity of a sacred vow. 2 hours later, Evelyn was deep in code when her phone rang. The caller ID made her smile. Sarah Martinez, her college roommate and closest friend, calling from Denver. "Please tell me you're sitting down," Sarah said without preamble. "Hello to you too. And yes, I'm sitting. Why? Because I just saw the most gorgeous engagement ring in the window of Morrison's jewelry. And the sales associate told me someone from Portland put it on hold yesterday with very specific instructions about sizing and timing." Evelyn's hands froze over her keyboard. "Sarah, Morrison's is the most exclusive jewelry store in Denver, Evie. The ring I saw probably cost more than my car. And the sales associate said the buyer was very particular about the setting. Vintage Art Deco, emerald cut diamond, platinum band with small accent stones. How do you even know? Because I may have pretended to be interested in a similar style and asked very detailed questions." Sarah's voice was smug. "Also, the buyer left specific instructions that it should be ready for pickup this weekend." Evelyn felt her heart start racing. "This weekend is Theo's second birthday." "Exactly. Oh, Evie, he's going to propose at the birthday party, isn't he? In front of everyone who loves you both? You don't know that." Evelyn protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Maybe it's for someone else. Maybe. Maybe you should stop overthinking this and start planning what you're going to wear when the man you love asks you to marry him." After Sarah hung up, Evelyn sat staring at her computer screen without seeing the code displayed there. The possibility of a proposal had been dancing around the edges of their relationship for months. Subtle hints, meaningful glances, conversations that seemed to approach the subject before veering away into safer territory. But a proposal at Theo's birthday party, surrounded by the people who had become their chosen family, it would be perfect. The day passed in a blur of distracted productivity. Evelyn found herself checking her phone constantly, jumping every time it rang, and mentally cataloging the guest list for tomorrow's party. Her parents were flying in from Colorado, Landon's business partner Marcus and his family, several neighbors who had become friends, and Sarah, who had mysteriously decided she needed to visit Portland this weekend. When Landon returned home that evening, he was practically vibrating with excitement. "We got it," he announced the moment he walked through the door. "Full partnership, 18-month development timeline, and complete creative control over the security architecture." "That's incredible." Evelyn threw her arms around him, genuinely thrilled despite her distraction. "I'm so proud of you." "Proud of us," he corrected, spinning her around the kitchen while Theo clapped and giggled from his play area. "This is going to change everything, Evie. We'll be able to expand both companies, hire more people, maybe even open an office in Seattle." He was talking fast, the way he did when his mind was racing through possibilities, but there was something else in his expression, a nervous energy that seemed out of proportion to even this significant business victory. "Daddy!" Theo interrupted, toddling over with his arms raised. "Up!" Landon scooped up their son, who immediately began chattering about his own day's adventures. As Evelyn watched them together, Landon listening with complete attention to Theo's nonsensical story, their son's face bright with joy at having his father's focus, she felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with loving someone so much it almost hurt. "Tomorrow's going to be perfect," Landon said suddenly, looking at her over Theo's head. "The party, I mean. Everything's going to be perfect." The next morning dawned clear and warm, unusual for October in Portland. Evelyn spent the early hours decorating the backyard with streamers and balloons while Landon claimed he had last-minute errands to run. Theo helped by providing running commentary on her color choices and occasionally attempting to climb the ladder she was using to hang decorations. By noon, the house was transformed. The backyard looked like something from a magazine, with tables covered in cheerful cloths, a bounce house that had required significant negotiation to fit through the side gate, and enough food to feed a small army. Theo, dressed in his special birthday outfit, a button-down shirt and tiny khakis that made him look heartbreakingly grown up, was beside himself with excitement. The guests began arriving at 1 o'clock. Evelyn's parents, who had fallen completely in love with both Landon and their grandson over the past 6 months, came bearing gifts that were probably too expensive and definitely too numerous. Marcus and his wife brought their twin daughters, who immediately claimed Theo as their honorary little brother and whisked him away to explore the bounce house. "You look nervous," Sarah observed, appearing at Evelyn's elbow with a knowing smile. "I'm fine," Evelyn lied, smoothing her carefully chosen dress, a navy blue wrap dress that brought out her eyes and made her feel both elegant and comfortable. "Uh-huh. And that's why you've rearranged the appetizer table 3 times in the past 10 minutes. Before Evelyn could respond, Landon appeared beside them, looking unfairly handsome in dark jeans and a white button-down shirt. But there was definitely something different about his energy, a barely contained excitement that made him seem almost electric. "Ladies," he said, kissing Sarah's cheek and then Evelyn's. "Everything looks incredible. Where did you disappear to this morning?" Evelyn asked. "Just picking up a few things." His smile was mysterious. "Nothing important." The party unfolded with the beautiful chaos that came with toddlers and extended family. Theo received enough presents to stock a toy store, demolished his dinosaur-themed birthday cake with enthusiastic efficiency, and charmed every adult present with his increasingly sophisticated vocabulary and irrepressible personality. As the afternoon stretched toward evening, Evelyn found herself watching Landon more closely. He seemed to be waiting for something, checking his phone occasionally and scanning the crowd as if looking for a particular moment. "Daddy, Daddy," Theo called out, running toward them with chocolate frosting still smeared across his cheek. "Play trains." "In a minute, buddy," Landon said, then looked around at their gathered friends and family. "Actually, I think this might be the perfect time." Evelyn's heart stopped. This was it. Landon moved to the center of the patio, and gradually conversations quieted as people realized something significant was about to happen. He picked up Theo, who immediately began playing with his father's collar, oblivious to the attention focused on them. 2 years ago, Landon began, his voice carrying clearly across the yard. "This little guy came into the world, and everything changed. Not just for his incredible mother, but eventually for me too when I finally got the chance to meet him." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes as she realized he was including Theo in this moment, making their son part of the proposal, rather than an afterthought. "Theo," Landon continued, addressing their son directly, "what do you think about me asking your mama a very important question?" Theo considered this with the seriousness of someone much older. "Good question?" he asked. "The best question," Landon confirmed, then set Theo down and turned toward Evelyn. The world seemed to narrow to just the two of them as Landon reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he dropped to one knee, Evelyn heard several people gasp, but all she could focus on was his face, nervous and hopeful and so full of love it took her breath away. "Evelyn Harper," he said, opening the box to reveal the most beautiful ring she'd ever seen, exactly as Sarah had described, vintage and elegant and perfect. "You are the strongest, smartest, most amazing woman I've ever known. You're an incredible mother, a brilliant entrepreneur, and the love of my life." Theo, apparently deciding this was some sort of game, toddled over and plopped down next to Landon, mimicking his position on the ground. "You've given me the greatest gift possible in our son, and you've shown me what it means to put family first, to fight for what matters, to build something real and lasting." Landon's voice was steady but emotional. "I want to spend the rest of my life earning the privilege of being your partner, Theo's father, and hopefully the father of the children we'll have together." "Yes," Evelyn whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course, yes." The ring slid onto her finger like it had been made for her, which, given Landon's attention to detail, it probably had been. As he stood and pulled her into his arms, their friends and family erupted in cheers and applause. "Mama happy," Theo announced, clapping his hands with delight as if he'd orchestrated the entire thing. Very happy, Evelyn confirmed, laughing through tears as Landon spun her around. When he set her down, they were immediately surrounded by congratulations and hugs and excited chatter about wedding planning. But in the middle of all the celebration, Evelyn caught Landon's eye and mouthed, "I love you. I love you too," he mouthed back, then scooped up Theo, who was demanding to see the pretty sparkles on his mother's finger. As the sun set over their backyard, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Evelyn looked around at their chosen family, parents beaming with joy, friends already planning bridal showers, children playing without care for the grown-up emotions swirling around them. This was what happiness looked like, she realized. Not a perfect moment captured in amber, but a messy, chaotic, absolutely perfect life, built with someone who chose her every single day. "What are you thinking about?" Landon asked, appearing beside her with Theo drowsing in his arms. "Just this, all of this." She gestured around the yard, at their life. "A year ago, I never could have imagined we'd be here. A year ago, I was still pretending I didn't need you," Landon said softly. "Thank God for elevators." Evelyn laughed, remembering that moment that had started everything. Thank God for stubborn little boys who look exactly like their fathers. They stood together in the gathering dusk, watching their friends and family clean up the remnants of the party, listening to Theo's soft breathing as he finally succumbed to the exhaustion of his big day. Tomorrow they would start planning a wedding. Next month they would move Evelyn's company into the expanded office space Landon had been secretly negotiating. Next year, if they were lucky, they might be planning another birthday party for another little Mitchell. But tonight, they were simply a family, imperfect and real and absolutely complete. 3 years later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of their expanded home office, where Evelyn sat nursing 6-month-old Emma while reviewing quarterly reports on her laptop. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around her mother's thumb as she fed, her green eyes, identical to both her father's and older brother's, wide and alert as she took in the world around her. "Mama, Emma hungry again?" 5-year-old Theo asked from his art table in the corner, where he was creating what he called important business drawings, with the serious concentration he applied to everything. "She's growing fast," Evelyn said, adjusting Emma's position. "Just like you did." Theo nodded sagely, then returned to his artwork. At 5, he was a perfect blend of both parents, Landon's analytical mind wrapped in Evelyn's determined spirit, with a creativity and kindness that was uniquely his own. He spoke in complete sentences, asked questions that sometimes stumped the adults around him, and had appointed himself Emma's official protector and entertainment committee. The sound of footsteps on the stairs announced Landon's arrival, and Emma immediately turned her head toward the sound, a smile breaking across her face despite being mid-meal. "Good morning, my beautiful girls," Landon said, dropping a kiss on Evelyn's head before gently stroking Emma's cheek. "And good morning to my favorite artist." "Daddy, look." Theo held up his drawing, a colorful representation of their family that included what appeared to be a dog. "I made us with Max." "Max?" Evelyn asked, raising an eyebrow at her husband. "We may have discussed the possibility of a family pet," Landon admitted, with the sheepish grin that still made her heart flutter. "Theo's been very persuasive in his arguments about responsibility and companionship." "Very persuasive," Theo agreed solemnly. Evelyn laughed, shifting Emma to her shoulder for burping. "Well, I suppose we do have the yard for it, and the house feels so much bigger since the renovation." The renovation had been necessary when Emma arrived, expanding their already comfortable home to include a proper nursery, a larger home office that could accommodate both of their growing businesses, and a playroom that could contain Theo's increasing collection of trains, blocks, and books. "Speaking of the business," Landon said, settling into his own desk chair, "the Portland expansion is officially complete. We'll be able to hire 12 more developers and move the entire cybersecurity division into the new building by next month." "That's incredible." Evelyn felt the familiar rush of pride and excitement. Their companies had grown beyond their wildest projections, becoming one of the Pacific Northwest's most innovative technology partnerships. What had started as separate businesses had evolved into an integrated operation that complemented their personal partnership perfectly. "And," Landon continued, his voice taking on a particular tone that Evelyn had learned to recognize, "Chen Industries wants to discuss expanding the partnership internationally. They're talking about offices in Tokyo and London." "That would mean travel," Evelyn said carefully. "Not much and never for more than a few days at a time, and only if we both agree it's right for our family." Landon's priorities had been permanently reordered 3 years ago when Theo called him Daddy, For the first time, business success mattered, but it would never again come at the expense of the people he loved. Emma finished her meal and immediately began the baby version of demanding attention from her father. Landon reached for her with the practiced ease of a man who had learned that infant care was just another skill to master, settling her against his chest where she promptly grabbed a handful of his shirt and attempted to eat it. "Remember when we used to think we were busy before, Emma?" Evelyn asked, watching her husband handle their daughter with the same focused attention he brought to million-dollar negotiations. "I remember thinking I knew what love was before I met you," Landon replied, then thinking I understood it completely when I first held Theo. And then Emma arrived and somehow made it all even bigger. Theo looked up from his drawing. "Love gets bigger when families get bigger," he announced with the wisdom of someone who had recently become a big brother. "Like balloons." "Exactly like balloons," Evelyn agreed, marveling at how her 4-year-old could distill complex emotions into perfect metaphors. The morning routine continued around them, Landon fielding calls from the London office while bouncing Emma, Theo providing colorful commentary on everything from the weather to the neighbor's new garden, Evelyn managing client emails while mentally planning dinner and wondering if they had enough diapers to last the day. It was beautifully, chaotically normal. "Oh," Landon said suddenly, "I almost forgot. We got an invitation yesterday." "To what?" "Victoria's wedding. She's marrying some British tech executive she met in London. The invitation says she's found someone who appreciates both ambition and authenticity, whatever that means." Evelyn felt a warm surprise at the news. Over the past 3 years, Victoria had sent occasional emails, updates on her life in London, congratulations on Emma's birth, even a beautiful handmade baby blanket that Evelyn suspected Victoria had crafted herself during what she'd described as a therapeutic crafting phase. "That's wonderful," Evelyn said sincerely. "I'm happy for her. Are you surprised?" "Not really. She just needed to find someone who wanted the same thing she did." Evelyn adjusted her position, settling more comfortably in her chair. "I think she spent so long trying to fit into what she thought she should want that she forgot to figure out what she actually wanted." Theo suddenly appeared beside Landon's chair, having finished his masterpiece. "Daddy, can we go to the park today? Emma likes the swings." "Emma likes anything that involves motion and attention," Landon said, gently extracting his shirt from their daughter's determined grip. "But yes, we can go to the park after lunch. Can we bring the trains?" "We can bring 2 trains," Evelyn negotiated. "The red engine and 1 car." Theo considered this carefully. "The blue car?" "The blue car is acceptable." As Theo ran off to begin the complex process of selecting which toys were worthy of a park expedition, Evelyn found herself looking around their shared office space, at the family photos mixed in with business awards, the toy box tucked discreetly behind Landon's desk, the baby swing that had become a permanent fixture next to the window. 3 years ago, she never could have imagined this version of success. She'd thought she wanted independence, professional recognition, the satisfaction of building something entirely her own. She'd gotten all of that, but she'd also discovered that the best accomplishments were the ones you shared with people who loved you exactly as you were. "What are you thinking about?" Landon asked, following her gaze around the room. "Just how different this is from what I thought I wanted. Better different or worse different?" "Much better different." She smiled at him. This man who had learned to balance laptop and baby with equal skill, who read bedtime stories with the same passion he brought to business presentations, who had somehow figured out how to give her everything she'd never knew she needed. "Good," he said, standing and moving toward her with Emma still contentedly settled against his chest. "Because I have a surprise for you." "Another surprise? You do remember that I just had a baby 6 months ago and am still functioning on approximately 3 hours of sleep per night? This is a good surprise, a relaxing surprise." He pulled his phone from his pocket and showed her a confirmation email. "Sarah and Marcus are taking the kids this weekend. All of them. For the entire weekend." "They're taking both kids? For a whole weekend? 48 hours of uninterrupted adult time. We can sleep late, eat hot food, have conversations that don't involve trains or diaper contents." Evelyn felt a flutter of excitement mixed with the immediate maternal panic that came with being separated from her children. "Emma's still nursing. I have a pump, remember? And Sarah raised twins. If anyone can handle our 2, it's her. What about Theo's nap schedule? And Emma's bedtime routine? And what if she cries and they can't?" Landon silenced her concerns with a kiss that still made her knees weak after all these years. "They'll be fine. We've taught them well, and they're resilient little people. Besides, when's the last time we had more than 3 consecutive hours alone? Evelyn tried to remember, and came up blank. Between building businesses and raising babies, their romantic time had been reduced to stolen moments between conference calls and exhausted cuddling after the kids were finally asleep. "What did you have in mind?" she asked. "That little bed and breakfast on the coast you mentioned. The one with the fireplace in the room and the restaurant that serves meals you eat with actual silverware. That sounds—" Evelyn paused as Emma began to fuss, the baby's internal clock indicating it was time for another feeding. "That sounds perfect." As if summoned by the prospect of romantic weekend plans, both children suddenly needed immediate attention. Theo appeared with a train-related emergency that required both parents to solve, while Emma escalated from fussing to the full-throated wail that meant serious business. The next 20 minutes were a blur of problem-solving, diaper-changing, snack-providing, and the general chaos that had become the soundtrack of their lives. By the time both children were settled, Theo happily building an elaborate train track in the living room, Emma content with a fresh diaper and another feeding, Evelyn and Landon looked at each other across the kitchen with the shell-shocked expression of parents everywhere. 48 hours, Landon repeated. 48 hours, Evelyn agreed. But as she looked around at their beautiful, chaotic life, at the toys scattered across expensive hardwood floors, at the business awards hanging next to children's artwork, at the man who had learned to change diapers without missing a beat in important phone calls, she realized she wouldn't trade a single moment of the beautiful madness they'd created together. "Mama," Theo called from the living room. "Come see the bridge I made." "Coming," she called back, then looked at Landon with a smile that felt like sunshine. "Ready for another adventure? With you and them?" He gestured toward the living room where Theo's chatter mixed with Emma's contented baby sounds. "Always." They walked hand in hand toward their children, toward another day of the perfectly imperfect life they'd built from love, determination, and the courage to bet everything on each other. Outside, Portland was waking up to another beautiful morning, full of possibilities and challenges and the promise of everything good that could happen when you chose love over fear, family over everything else, and the beautiful unknown over the safety of what you thought you wanted. Some stories ended with happily ever after. This one was still being written, one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. Years from now, when Theo and Emma are grown with families of their own, they'll look back on these early years as the foundation of everything they understand about love, commitment, and what it means to build something lasting with another person. Their parents' love story, from that first elevator encounter to this moment, reading bedtime stories and managing midnight feedings and finding joy in the beautiful chaos of family life, will be the standard against which they measure their own relationships. Because some love stories aren't about perfect moments or dramatic gestures. The best ones are about choosing each other, again and again through sleepless nights and stressful days, through professional triumphs and parenting failures, through all the ordinary moments that add up to a life worth living. When faced with your own crossroads between love and ambition, between the safe choice and the leap of faith, between what you thought you wanted and what your heart knows you need, what choice would you make? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.